Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya, and today we will talk about the after effects of the 74th summit of UNGA. Now, Turkey and Malaysia openly came out in support of Pakistan during the recently concluded 74th session of United Nations General Assembly. In a swift response, India firmed up its move against Turkey by cementing ties with three of Ankara's neighbours and strong rivals, that is Cyprus, Armenia and Greece. Prime Minister Modi met his counterparts from Greece and Armenia and President of Cyprus on the sidelines of the UNGA summit and held dialogue to expand the scope of bilateral relations. So what is the significance of these developments and what effect will it have on India's relations with these nations and otherwise on all issues as well? For this, we have a distinguished panel of guests today in the studio with us. Let me start by introducing these guests to you, beginning with Mr. Pramit Chaudhuri, the Foreign Affairs Editor of Hindustan Times. We also have with us former Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, somebody who's been to these nations, and we will soon be joined by Professor Pant, the Head of Strategic Affairs of ORF. But let me begin with you, Pramit, meanwhile, and let's try and understand, the significance also in terms of how these events went by, as in Turkey and Malaysia standing by Pakistan there, and then, India swiftly making that move by having these, bilateral dialogue with their counterparts of Cyprus, Armenia and Greece as well.
Turkey, we'll begin with Turkey. Turkey has always had a long-standing and close relationship with Pakistan. And it is not just Erdogan and the Islamic wing of the political movement there, but even when it was a secular nation, they've always maintained a certain closeness to Pakistan. The Turkish military, for example, has always had a very close relationship with the Pakistani military establishment. General Pervez Musharraf actually spoke fluent Turkish and spent part of his childhood there because of this military-to-military relationship. And the Turks believe, probably incorrectly, that historically, when their country was at its lowest after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, that it was Pakistani Muslims who helped provide money to keep their country going, but it was actually Indian Muslims in Uttar Pradesh who did it, but they give the benefit to Pakistanis. Erdogan himself has been effectively on a steady and continuing decline politically and economically at home. He positioned himself as the leader of the Islamic world and of the Arab world in particular when the Syrian civil war broke out and the Arab Spring took off. That attempt to develop a relationship with countries like Egypt and Syria and the Muslim Brotherhood in particular fell apart, partly because of both Egypt and Syria. The Brotherhood failed to stay or failed to come to power. He's then flirted. He fought with the Russians for a while, then turned around and embraced them. He fought with the Chinese over the Uyghur Muslim issue, and the gang has turned around and embraced them. He's now, I think, looking for, if you wish, international issues that have minimal price for Turkey, but where he can make a lot of rhetorical noise. And I think Kashmir has been one of the issues that he's picked on.
And what is the scenario with Malaysia? As far as Malaysia is concerned, is more of a domestic audience which the president is trying to address out there.
Mahathir has always given rhetorical support to the issue of Kashmir, even when his previous decades ago when he was ruling in Malaysia. In his case, I gather it's largely a battle between him and Anwar Ibrahim, who is effectively his co-ruler. But while Anwar and Mahathir is supposed to step down at some point and share power and hand over power to Anwar, he seems to be resisting that likelihood. Anwar is very close to the Islamic parties in Malaysia. And so Mahathir has been picking up a number of cards that the Islamicists take as important or useful in an attempt to marginalize Anwar and buffer his own support. One of these has been Kashmir.
Okay, so there it is, mostly to address the domestic audiences out there, specifically with respect to Malaysia. But let me bring in Professor Pant here. Professor Pant, your views on hows and whys of the stance which have been taken by Turkey and Malaysia respectively in the UNGA, and the way India has responded to that as well, specifically in Turkey's case.
Turkey is a curious case, and I think Pramit has laid out the sort of larger picture. But if you recall, Erdogan's earlier visit to India was also clouded in this Kashmir dispute, because just as he was landing, he made a remark on Kashmir, and I think that somehow has been a persistent problem for India in engaging with Turkey historically, and now with Erdogan, as he's trying to establish himself as this champion of Muslim cause around the world. Given the domestic problems that he's facing, I think this is the easiest thing to do in terms of projecting your role as the guardian of Islamic world. And I think in that has been one of the bigger problems in terms of India's response to this. How do you respond to such a shift in, by and large, the Muslim world has not been very supportive of the Pakistani stand. And by and large, you have had, especially in the Middle East, major states in the Middle East supporting India's candidacy. So here comes Turkey and does say certain things on Kashmir. And I think India's response has been quite effective in terms of at least the optics of it. Okay. Given that that there is a reciprocity in our engagement, that if you can do this, then we also have certain cards to play. And I think India's engagement with Cyprus or Armenia or Greece
established its irritation with the
so it's clearly kind of making its displeasure felt as far as Turkey is concerned. And I think the message must have gone down to the Turkish leadership that this is not a one-way street, that you can continue to harangue India on a certain issue on which you have no locus standi and not expect a response.
Okay, let me bring in Ambassador Anil Trigunayat here. Ambassador Trigunayat, from your perspective of this entire situation here, wherein Turkey and Malaysia are playing these cards, and India is giving a fitting response out there diplomatically.
Well, as you know, and as has been mentioned by both Pramit and Dr. Pant, is that Turkey essentially is trying to find out a larger role as a leader of the Muslim world. And Imran Khan has been tagging along to Turkey for quite a while now. Ever since he has come, he's been seeking support. That has been there. And Turkey has also been, since we have been trying to have more closer relations with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, that are at crossroads with the Turks. So obviously the Erdogan, who's trying to have these kind of arbitrary approaches, finds some salience in this, that he can speak about Kashmir issue and just be done with it. The thing is that Turkey, as was mentioned earlier, has been very close to Pakistan for many, many decades. In the 80s and 90s, they had a group called D8 in which Pakistan was a member. And therefore, they have these kind of relations, and military to military relations have been very close. The generals and others have been training with one another's academies. And so we feel that, it has been known for long that Turkey is going to be more of an economic partner, but as far as the political domain is concerned, vis-a-vis Pakistan, we might have a little bit of a downside there. The Malaysia, on the other hand, it is, I would say, clearly Mahathir Mohamad's approach to it. He is known to have these kind of inklings. And as you know, he comes from an India origin family, basically Moplas. And he is trying to probably shed off in the last few years, shed off that Indian identity that he carries in his genes. And I would believe that, that he had committed to Imran Khan. But Malaysia, we have a lot of Indian community. We have the old community, and we have good economic relations with Malaysia. And if this kind of thing they are going to do, I'm sure that that is going to impact our engagement with them as far as the key imports from their country are concerned, or allotment of projects are concerned. I'm quite sure that the government has been very seriously watching on what they are doing, because this was not their domain to talk about. They did not even consider Indian position in that regard, and I think we probably did not have a closer engagement. I think we should try to make them understand where it is. Like, for example, just yesterday, day before yesterday, NSA Duval was in Saudi Arabia, and there was a news item that PMI visit there again. But that is the kind of thing, I don't know if we could do a little more with Erdogan and ask what is their problem. And as far as Malaysia is concerned, probably that could be amenable. But I think with the change in government there, whenever its co-leader Anwar Ibrahim takes over, I would presume that the things might improve there. But at the same time, we need not lose a lot of sleep on what these guys are saying, because there are only literally 3 countries out of the whole gamut of nations who are present there, China, Turkey and Malaysia. Those were the ones who made these noises, and I think we should simply discount those.
Okay, so that's quite significant out there coming from Mr. Trigunayat, that, you know, what is being said by Turkey and Malaysia, specifically on the Kashmir issue, might not hold much importance to us. But specifically, if you look at the bilateral issues, and let me start with you, Pramit, again, between India and Turkey and between India and Malaysia, specifically looking at from the economic angle as well as diplomatic angle and other engagements which we have. How do you see things moving from here onwards, the kind of stand which their governments have taken now?
Well, Turkey, I think we've signaled our displeasure, but fundamentally there isn't that much of a relationship between India and Turkey. There's some trade, some investment, but nothing that is particularly large or neither side particularly concerned about the economic relationship between them. I think one of the areas India could consider, and I think we've already, one of the reasons for Erdogan's displeasure with us, he's been after this, there's this Turkish sect called the Gulenists, who have, one of the things that they have is a network of schools around the world, including in India, and he has been trying to press the Indian government to shut those schools down, which we have resisted. And providing further support to the Gulenists is something that India could consider. But fundamentally, as I said, the view globally is that Erdogan is essentially on a losing wicket, both domestically, economically, and so on. So there's really not much reason for India to get too excited about him. He can do nothing that is particularly useful to Pakistan. He does not have the money. He signed a few military contracts with the Pakistanis. I'd be curious to see if Pakistan can afford to pay for the warships that he's contracted for. Even 5 or 6 years ago, his government was trying to get trying to get the Indian government to give his companies some large infrastructure projects in India, which is what a lot of his business support comes out of, infrastructure projects. And India basically said, you know, you try for a tender like everybody else, you're not going to get anything special.
Okay.
So I think that remains it. Malaysia, we're not overly concerned. That's even more rhetorical, even less to provide. No real substantial interest between Malaysia and Pakistan. And as I've said, Anwar Ibrahim, his co-ruler, is very much on our side, and we were waiting to see whether that transition takes place. And as the ambassador has mentioned, the two countries in the Islamic world that Pakistan got genuine physical and tangible support from, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, in the way of both money, oil, and so on, both of them have cut Pakistan loose and basically said...
And they have stood firmly with India.
With India. So for us, that has been by far a much larger accomplishment. And the only real ally of Pakistan right now that has the capacity to do any serious damage to us, which is China, has so far preferred to be neutral. And you'll notice that Xi Jinping has not postponed or cancelled his coming summit with Modi, despite what has happened in Kashmir. And his foreign ministry spokesperson, in response to a direct question, said, Kashmir is not going to be on our agenda.
Okay.
For Pakistan, really, that's China throwing them under the bus and saying, our relationship with India is now moving on a separate track. And while we will provide you some rhetorical support, don't expect us to sacrifice the India relationship for you.
Okay, so that's quite clear out there on this aspect. Professor Pant, your views on all these three?
Well, I think, Clearly China is the big, game in town, and we should be managing it deftly, which I think we are doing. And China also has recognized, I think, some of the damage that could potentially have been done to the relationship with what they did by supporting Pakistan in the UN Security Council. So I think with the Chinese president's visit this month to Delhi, we will be looking for taking that Wuhan conversation forward. There can be, I'm not so sure what substantive outcome might come out of it, but I think the fact that it is happening under these circumstances tells you a story about Sino-Indian relations, that they are moving in a direction that perhaps both countries want, irrespective of what is happening on the Pakistan front. But I think the Turkey and Malaysia question, to me it seems relatively irrelevant in the larger scheme of things with the kind of global footprint India has today in the world, and with the kind of conversations India was part of at the UN General Assembly special session. So I think when you look at the larger picture and you look at these two countries siding with Pakistan, talking of various things and talking in particular about Kashmir, I think in India's challenge perhaps is to, as I think Ambassador Trigunayat pointed out, that perhaps making an effort in making them understand that, look, this is India's position. If you have not understood it, let us make one more effort. But I think beyond that, there is little India can do. And I'm not so sure that these countries themselves are doing anything more than just mere rhetoric. I think apart from saying that we will run a television channel on Islamic terrorism with Pakistan, or talking a bit about Kashmir, I think there is nothing there in the bilateral relationship there. With India, I think with Turkey, the relationship remains uneven. I think we need to recognize the fact that Turkey, which at one point was looking at its identity through the prism of the West, has now completely changed track and is now looking at it primarily through its Islamic ideology. And I think for Malaysia, on the other hand, the picture is much more complex. If you recall, Mahathir was just elected on this big promise of making the relationship with China more balanced. But I think so there are larger issues here with Malaysia, which with the kind of domestic linkages that we have with Malaysia, as well as with the larger strategic picture that is emerging in the wider Indo-Pacific. I think the conversations with Malaysia are going to be in a completely different orbit very soon. So I'm not particularly worried about what Turkey and Malaysia are saying or doing with Pakistan.
Okay, so there it is, almost on the similar lines. So let me bring in Ambassador Trigunayat here. Ambassador Trigunayat, how far do you think both these nations, that is Turkey and Malaysia, would be able to push the envelope, also given the fact that the crucial FATF meeting is around the corner, and Pakistan would again be looking forward to some support from the same three nations, specifically these two, Turkey and Malaysia?
Well, as far as that was the basic game, essentially they have conveyed a signal to us by talking about Kashmir, that in the FATF they will be siding with Pakistan. That is a very clear given, and that's what I feel, that the effort to get, or the legitimate effort to get Pakistan blacklisted for this kind of terror financing and other things might just get a miss because of these three countries, and possibly they were also trying to get into Saudi Arabia for that matter. But all said and done, I don't think, and as my other co-panelists have also said it, our feeling is that it was a bad noise, and but we should not be unduly perturbed. It is, of course, in diplomacy it is important to continue friendships, but if it is going to hurt them somehow economically, if they think that we can buy palm oil from Indonesia instead of Malaysia, or the Indian film industry refuses to go there, which has basically made them what they call truly Asia and all those kind of things, it can have a long-term impact. Because India, there is no comparison between India and Pakistan. And if they have cast their lot with Pakistan, even for Islamic reasons, they can make their noises in OIC and elsewhere. And in the UN, I think that Mahathir Mohamad probably thought that this was his last major big thing, so he could emerge as an international leader and create some ripples. So it was probably driven more by his personal the idiosyncrasy, I would say, that he took this line, which has been, in my view, quite bad vis-a-vis India. and they might not be able to continue with this kind of a bonhomie that we have had with them. Even in the ASEAN, when we were doing it there also at one time, he had tried to put it down, but he is a bit of a, I mean, he thinks, I have met him many times, I mean, he thinks like he's a very, very big global leader, and he can do things, and I find that very often he can be very much off the mark.
Okay.
And so I think that that is there. Erdogan has been mentioned, again has been living in a different kind of paradise of his own, but he's facing a lot of problems, and his identity crisis is causing them to run up to those kind of issues which have put them directly within in the Middle East in direct conflict with the United States, with Saudi Arabia, some other countries, because of the kind of policies and Islamic Brotherhood kind of policies that he has followed.
Okay.
So we do not have very much to sync with them, frankly, in any way except tourism, which is a big thing. We don't buy very much of defense equipment, or they are not doing very many big projects here. They have tried, but they probably have not succeeded in doing that for various reasons. But of course, they could be a partner in different parts of the world. And it's an important country in G20 and all, and so we have to continue to engage with these countries. On the bilateral front, we should clearly mention to them that that is an unacceptable behavior, and unacceptable in our bilateral discourse has to be conveyed A, through our ambassadors, and B, through our joint commissions, or whenever we have the meetings with them.
Okay.
This is extremely important.
Okay.
Malaysia has a significant quantity of Indians there, diaspora, and that is our major concern in the country. We need to continue to look after their welfare, and that's where the relationship currently, as far as India is concerned, we tried very hard. They got some projects in the, as you know, in our in the infrastructure sector also. Malaysia has been quite present here for many years now, and therefore they have to weigh in what is it that benefits them more.
Okay.
Doing this kind of nonsensible approaches, or an approach that gives them a positive outcome for their countries.
Okay. So there is, but quickly and concluding comments from both of you, starting with Pramit and bringing in the FATF angle as well. How do you see things moving from here onwards?
The FATF, as you've mentioned, will more or less, I think, just keep Pakistan to the grey list. Not only does Pakistan have these two countries, China holds the chair at the FATF, so we should not be expecting anything to go beyond what it is right now, and they will hold. So all we can hope is that other countries, notably the United States, will hold Pakistan's feet to the fire, but keep it from actually going beyond a certain point, because we just simply don't have the votes for that.
Okay.
And I think just to keep in mind that one thing, however, everybody is realizing is that the GDP of Pakistan today in dollar terms is smaller than the city of Mumbai. And that's how bad their economy is. And so if you are going to throw your lot in with Pakistan, you will receive zero economic benefit.
Okay. So that is something which needs to be made quite clear to them. Professor Pant, final comments from you.
Yeah, I think India has taken the right step by making its displeasure very clear to, especially to the Turks, that this kind of behavior should not continue. But I don't think that that's a message that they are going to receive. Erdogan in particular is going to receive very positively. So I'm not very positive about the future of Indo-Turkish relations. But I think the larger point here is, as India rises in the global interstate hierarchy, I think India needs to be, and India has been more confident of its asserting its own interests on the global stage, and that was a reflection of how Mr. Modi, performed at the UNGA and made India's case very visible. So I think by and large these noises, a few noises here and there, and from Turkey and Malaysia in particular, we have had a very productive engagement. He has had a very productive engagement with the UNGA, and I think that's a reflection of India's rising global stature.
Okay, so there it is. India's rising global stature is what is important here. And as our panelists are also pointing out, there is no need to attach much currency to all these noises being made by countries like Turkey and Malaysia, though we will have to continue to try and make it clear to them that if anything is against India's national interest, it will be pointed out to them and others as well. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.